Hello everybody, my name is Godfrey Wagwema. The other members of this group are James Catlin and John Hassan. This presentation is about postmodernism. I will start by talking about the 4 elements of research, and then I'll talk about what postmodernism is and its origins. I will also mention some theories and concepts that apply to postmodernism. Let's talk about the 4 elements of research. The questions we must answer in any research are: what methods do we use? This question refers to the techniques and procedures to collect and analyze data that is related to our research question. The next question we have to look at is: what methodology governs our choice and use of methods? This question refers to the use of a particular method or methods that will give us the desired outcomes. The next question that we must ask is: what theoretical perspective lies behind the methodology in question? This question refers to the philosophical stance informing the methodology and thus providing a context for the methodology. The final question we must consider is: what epistemology informs this theoretical perspective? This question refers to the theory of knowledge embedded in the theoretical perspective and therefore informs the methodology. This diagram right here illustrates how the 4 elements inform each other. The epistemology informs the theoretical perspective. The theoretical perspective in turn informs the methodology, and from the methodology we can determine our methods. Here we have examples of epistemologies, theoretical perspectives, methodology, and methods. In our presentation, we shall discuss postmodernism, which falls under the theoretical perspective. Let's consider the question: what is postmodernism? Postmodernism describes both an era and a movement that developed in the late 20th century across philosophy, the arts, and architecture. It's a criticism which marked departure from modernism. Postmodernism encompasses a broad range of ideas defined by an attitude of skepticism or distrust towards grand narratives and ideologies and tenets of enlightenment, rationality, such as objective reality and absolute truth. Postmodernism is normally associated with the deconstruction and post-structuralism analysis. Postmodernism emphasizes changing ways of thinking rather than action-based research. In relationship to modernism, postmodernism is a logical succession rather than a succession of time. Let's look at the origin of this term, postmodernism. This term was first used around 1880s by John Watkins to describe the postmodern style of painting as a way of departure from the French Impressionism. Then in 1914, J.M. Thomson used the term postmodernism to describe changes in attitudes and beliefs in the critique of religion. Between 1921 and 1925, postmodernism was used to describe the new form of art and music. In 1942, H.R. Reyes described postmodernism as a new literary form. Later on in 1949, postmodernism was used to describe a dissatisfaction with modern architecture, leading to the postmodern architecture movement. More recently, Peter Drucker suggested the transformation into a postmodern world from a modern world occurred between the two decades, that's between 1937 and 1957. Postmodernism was characterized by a shift to a conceptual world based on patterns and processes, rather than mechanical causes as outlined by the emergence of an educated society and the collapse of the viability of non-Western cultures. Postmodernism committed itself to ambiguity, relativity, fragmentation, particularity, and discontinuity. I'll just mention three influential postmodernist philosophers. The first one is Martin Heidegger. He rejected the philosophical basis of concepts of subjectivity and objectivity on the grounds that oppositions in logic ultimately refer to one another. Richard Rorty argued that contemporary analytic philosophy mistakenly imitates scientific methods, and he also denounced the traditional epistemological perspectives of representation and correspondence theory. More recently, Douglas Kellner insisted that assumptions and procedures of modern theory must be forgotten, and postmodernism would decide what experiences and signs in one's reality will be one's reality as he or she understands that reality. Let's talk about deconstruction and structuralism. Deconstruction is a concept that is central to Postmodernism. It was developed by Jacques Derrida and suggests that an analysis that questions the understanding of a text in terms of presuppositions, ideological underpinnings, hierarchical values, and frames of reference. The process involves rigorous analyzing and making apparent the assumptions, judgments, and values that underlie social arrangements and intellectual ideas. On the other hand, structuralism was developed by French academicians in the 1950s in response to existentialism, and it's also an expression of modernism, high modernism, or postmodernism. Structuralism is both a way of thinking about the world and a methodology for investigating that world. Structuralism is concerned with identifying structures that cannot be observed, but must be inferred. On the other hand, post-structuralism emphasizes how various aspects of culture, from its most ordinary everyday materials to its most abstract theories and beliefs, relate to each other. Post-structuralism rejects the idea that cause and effect relationships are top-down or bottom-up. Let me pick up what postmodernism is. Postmodernism is a collection of many theories. It's not just one theory. There are many theories that are involved. Postmodernism emerged in the humanities in the 60s as a reaction to the 19th and 20th century Enlightenment, which emphasized rationality, universals, positivism, and science. If modernism is the ability to discover absolute forms of knowledge, then postmodernism is the rejection of this notion. Also, if modernism is a reaction against instrumentality and rationalization, then postmodernism is an extension of this emphasis on the tentative, temporary, contingent, provisional, and ambiguity. Let me leave you with this quote from Sarab. And this is what he says. Postmodernism is characterized by the deletion of the boundary between art and everyday life, the collapse of the hierarchical distinction between the elite and popular culture, the collapse between a stylistic eclecticism and mixing of gods. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and you are welcome. Thank you.